Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
Hi, I'm Eden Lane. Thanks for joining me for In Focus. This week we're at MCA Denver, the Museum of Contemporary Art, right here in the Platte neighborhood. We're going to sit down with the director of this fantastic facility and find out about his very unique job title.
But first we head down to the P.A.C.E Center for the world premiere of Marie, a collaboration of Wonderbound and the Baroque Chamber Orchestra of Colorado, whose artistic director Frank Nowell met with me before the performance. This is really exciting that we get to come down to P.A.C.E Center to see Wonderbound and the Baroque Chamber Orchestra collaborate on a world premiere piece, Marie. Tell me about, this is your second collaboration with Wonderbound, right?
Yes, our first collaboration was in the fall of 2012. It was called A Dangerous Liaison. And I think both groups, soon after it was over, started talking about our next collaboration. We didn't want to have too much time pass before we collaborated again. So it was soon after that that we started talking about the concepts for Marie, and that's been developing over 2 years, and what we're going to be sharing with audiences tonight. And
this isn't original music that you're playing tonight?
No, although there is one original improvisation piece. But everything else is music from actually Marie Antoinette's time and a little bit earlier. So it's music from the 18th century. And we had a really great time with going through all the possibilities and choosing the music and then letting Garrett kind of go with that and narrowing it down to what he wanted to choreograph.
What were you looking for, beside, of course, the music being from the period? What were you looking for to help tell this story when you were selecting this music?
I think the main thing was to have a really wide range of emotions and music that's lively and music that's more intimate. Having worked with Garrett before, we knew that was probably the best way, is just to give lots of choices and to have a really wide range and an emotional palette that he could choose from.
So tell me a little bit about the pieces that actually made the final cut, as it were.
Yes. Right. Well, we have music from Austria and music from France. So,
which makes sense.
Right. Austria was, after all, Marie Antoinette's native country, and so we didn't want to neglect that and her roots. But obviously, we also have a lot of music from France, and two composers in particular, Leclerc and Rameau, were composers in the late Baroque that were really kind of pushing the limits a little bit in terms of the conventions in France, and so we thought that was very appropriate. And we also have some Mozart, so it's not very well known that Mozart and Marie Antoinette actually met on one occasion when they were children, and so we wanted to include his music as well.
That is a delightful surprise to not only have a piece of Mozart, but to learn that little anecdote. The research that you did to help select the palette that you would offer to Garrett, tell me about how that began.
Well, we really began with Cynthia, our concertmaster, Cynthia Miller-Freivogel, and Garrett and I meeting several times and kind of developing the concept of what we wanted the show to be about. And it was a really exhilarating time of thinking about Marie Antoinette, her life and times, and we found many connections with modern society, interestingly enough, and it just had a lot of really good conversations. And then when it was a while before we really started looking at music, but I think at first I was a little bit daunted by the sheer large number of the possibilities that we could choose from. But I think I had an idea of where I wanted to go with the music. But still, we gave Garrett probably at least 3 or 4 times as much music as he needed.
Now, we know that ballet companies, any kind of dance company, always loves the ability to dance with live musicians, and Wonderbound has made it a priority again this season. What is it like for musicians to be able to play live with a dance company in this way?
Oh, it's absolutely exhilarating, and I think with our first collaboration, we were still getting to know each other, and our musicians were getting to know the process of working with dancers. We hadn't done that before, so it was a little bit of learning each other's language and how to communicate. But this time, we feel like we know each other a lot better, and it's just from our point of view. It's a spectacular collaboration and very, very fulfilling. And then there are different, I mentioned that there's an improvisation on the program. There was a little 2-minute bit of choreography that all the music we chose, none of it really exactly fit, and there were some logistical issues. So Garrett sent me a video of the choreography and asked me if I would develop an improvisation or a semi-improvised piece on the harpsichord. And at first, that just seemed like a very daunting task because I could see the dancers, and I thought, do I need to match their every move?
Because that's not what Garrett tends to do with music. He doesn't always match. The best choreographers don't always match every measure.
Exactly, exactly. And so then I relaxed a little bit, and I said it's really about the emotion of this scene. And if I can come up with a piece that conveys that emotion, it's all going to work.
Now, since this is your second time collaborating with Wonderbound, what's the biggest lesson that the Baroque Chamber Orchestra has learned in terms of collaborating with a dance company?
Gosh, I think collaboration, I look at collaboration as sort of like a relationship. And what I love about working with Wonderbound is that it does seem to be an ongoing collaboration. It's not just, one time and it's over, but we I think have this feeling that we're going to continue exploring things together. And because of that relationship, there's a real commitment on both sides to make things work and to learn about each other. One of the things that I personally have learned from Wonderbound, among many things, is it's important to remember that a show should be entertaining. And so I think all the things we want to do, we want to move the audience and engage the audience, and I really believe that will happen with Marie. But it's also really important just for it to be an entertaining evening.
Now, Wonderbound has a reputation of collaborating with all sorts of artists all across the area and outside of the area. But the Baroque Chamber Orchestra also has collaborated before. I've even seen a piece with puppets. Tell me about the Baroque Chamber Orchestra's place in the ecosystem of the arts here in Colorado and how you participate and collaborate with other organizations.
So we're a period instrument orchestra, and we're the only professional period instrument orchestra in the region. So we're part of sort of a larger movement that's international in scope that is sometimes called early music, the early music movement, or historically informed performance. And that movement, if you will, has really matured to the point where a lot of groups like ours around the country are starting to say, what's next? What's next? Because at first it was the novelty of period instruments and playing and exploring music that hadn't been done before in modern times, and that's still very interesting to us. But also, what's next in the evolution of this art? And I think collaboration is a big part of that. And there's some collaborations that make sense, like working with a choir, for example, an orchestra and choir working together, and that's great. But I'm also looking for art forms that are just entirely different, and that's such a stimulating activity to invite someone like a puppet artist and have her listen to the music, and then say, what does this evoke for you, and what do you do with your art form? And it's always amazing to me what they come up with. Same thing with Wonderbound, that I know the first time that I saw choreography to some of the Baroque music that we had chosen in our first collaboration, my jaw dropped because they found things in the music that I had never thought of. And I think that's what's really exciting about artistic collaboration, is putting it together and finding another dimension for us for the music.
Well, I've enjoyed listening to the recordings that you have made and you have published on your website. And you have a CD out yet?
We have 2 CDs. One is called Cornucopia, and the other is Forte e Dolce.
Well, I've enjoyed listening to that music, and getting to see you collaborate is an extra treat. And I can't wait to come back and visit the Baroque Chamber Orchestra for its own sake and learn more about your members and the work that it takes to keep this music alive. Thank you for making time for me today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Now a sample of the lovely music played by the Baroque Chamber Orchestra of Colorado and the stunning choreography by Garrett Ammon for Wonderbound's production of Marie. Next, a look ahead at the gallery exhibition curated by Leon Gallery for the next performance of Marie at the Pinnacle Event Center.
I just think that all art needs to be celebrated right now. I don't think that there should be a limitation. There has been, I think in the past, are you a visual artist, are you a performing artist, do you do music, are you a writer? And I don't think those things should ever be separate. I think the art should all be celebrated as one.
I'm bringing a range of work, and there's some pieces that really seem to fit the theme in very direct ways, whether they're things that seem to be portraits of people that could be from that time, or objects that fit into that time period very specifically, and even some paintings that reference paintings from that time period. And some of the pieces are much more, a bit more of a stretch, and kind of my own personal fun way of looking at that theme and that period.
It was just like too perfect of a pairing. I mean, it was almost like, it was one of those, you know, aha moments. You're like, who are we gonna put in for each piece? And it was like, oh my gosh, Michael, Marie, perfect, yes. He looks at painting from a traditional standpoint and then puts his own contemporary twist on it.
I work with my own kind of modified version of the Medicean school method. And so it's an old method.
But he does such simple, graceful, beautiful movements with his paintings. And that's kind of the same thing with Marie and with Wonderbound. I mean, she was a queen, but she was not your typical queen, you know. And the same thing with Wonderbound. I mean, they are a classically trained dance company that looks at ballet, but then they bring it to a contemporary field. There is, you know, no limit to the size of what we're doing. It's just getting that art in front of people, showing them what's available and what's out there.
Now we return to the Museum of Contemporary Art Denver, MCA Denver, for my visit with the director and chief animator, Adam Lerner.
Your job title is the most fascinating thing I've heard for a museum director before, and I love the story about why you chose this. Could you share that with me?
Most museum directors would refer to themselves as, say, director and chief curator. But I don't want to just care for objects, which is what the original meaning of curator is. I want to bring objects to life, to animate them for my viewers. That's what we try to do at the museum.
That's brilliant. I love that because it not only is a reminder to you every day about that mission, but it sets the tone right away when we meet you.
Yes, exactly. People think, this guy's weird.
Well, I don't think you're weird. I just think you're very clever and very creative. One of the first things that you did to put your stamp on it when you joined here is this mixed taste program. Tell us a little bit about how that grew in your imagination and how you implement it here.
You know, mixed taste has been something that I've almost always had in my life. Like I believe on the one hand in university learning and museums and elevated forms of art and culture, and so I believe in the study of, say, Walt Whitman. But the other side of me just loves whole hog cooking. And so Mixed Taste brings together a leading expert on Walt Whitman and a leading expert on whole hog cooking. And then we have question and answer of both at the same time. It's just, I think, who I am, but I think it's also what a lot of people are as well.
I think it describes the neighborhood that your museum is in perfectly as well. Tell me a little bit about running a world-class contemporary art museum in the middle of urban renewal that's happening all around you.
I think of museums not as temples or as sort of isolated places apart from everyday life. What really interests me is how it is that a museum is an energizing force for a neighborhood and for a city. I almost think of the museum as a kind of like a battery pack or something like that. Or maybe even, the Museum of Contemporary Art, we have a heart in front of the museum, and it's maybe, we're like the heart center, breathing oxygenated creative blood into the neighborhood, into the city, and then drawing back the creativity of the neighborhood back into its home. That's really the way I see our museum.
The neighborhood you're in has changed considerably, even in the years that you've been here. You've been here since 2009. It's changed so much in the time that you've been here. Tell me about how that impacts your institution in the neighborhood.
We're really fortunate to be at the heart of a very dynamic neighborhood. So our challenge and what we see as our task is to draw some of that energy and see how we can participate in that as well, while still providing some of the gravitas around art. And that relationship between the sort of gravitas and art and the energy of the creative life of a neighborhood and a city is really what makes up who we are.
Your mission really reflects a very modern and open understanding of what a museum should be. Can you tell me a little bit about the mission statement of MCA?
I gotta say, I don't love mission statements. They feel very, I don't know, institutional to me. But the way my vision for the museum really is a place that both explores the tradition of art and continues a very long tradition of art. And, in the West, certainly you could think of back to Michelangelo or whoever you want to sort of locate at the beginning of our tradition, into the experiments that make up the present, on the one hand, and on the other hand, exploring not so much the tradition of art, but maybe what might not even be considered art, the sort of creative life of a city, the sort of DIY or do-it-yourself energy of a city. Those folks who are the fantastic chefs and the people who are the great bartenders and the people who are the great fashion designers, or all the people who are part of the creative energy of a city. Here at MCA Denver, we have both the sort of world-class art exhibitions and also world-class mixologists. And that combination defines the vision of our institution.
Even the building is set up to sort of live out that idea, because you have flexible spaces that you use in very creative ways. Not just a cafe and a gift shop, but there's more going on here. Tell me about that.
Oh, the Museum of Contemporary Art is really connected to the urban fabric. So you walk up the ramp to the museum and you walk into the space almost as if it's like a continuation of the walk along the sidewalk. But then when you walk through the galleries, you flow in and out of these porous spaces, almost like you're continuing your walk through an urban environment. It really is the big corridors are just as important as the spaces that they contain, these very, very beautiful gallery spaces.
And we get glimpses of the neighborhood from various points, even within the gallery spaces, through some of the creative windows placement that we see.
We're very fortunate to have had benefit of world-class architecture. David Adjaye is really a master. And one thing that he did for us is throughout the building, he opened up views into the neighborhood. You know, it's funny because when he built this building in 2007, the neighborhood wasn't yet even built up at all, but he really had a sense of it as being a part of an urban fabric, really connected to the fabric. And I really see us as that kind of organization. You know, the traditional art museum has almost always been surrounded by a kind of moat of grass. You know, it's almost, if you, like the Metropolitan Museum has got Central Park, and if you go to Cincinnati or Cleveland or any of the large, older sort of 19th century style museums, there's always a large sort of parkland, as if the museum is an oasis apart from the energy of the city. But we're a part of the fabric of this very vibrant neighborhood and very vibrant city.
You use your facility to reach out into the neighborhood in very clever ways. Some of your ongoing programming even includes teens in a very unique way. Tell me a little bit about that as part of such a major art institution.
One of the signature qualities of MCA Denver is our commitment to high school age teenagers. And we have an open door policy for teenagers so that they're all always free to the museum, thanks to a generous gift from the David and Laura Mirage Foundation. And that is just the backbone of a whole range of programming that we offer for teens. So we have, at the very center of it, this program we call the Failure Lab. And that's a program, it's a leadership program where we select 12 teens from high schools around the city, and they create the programming for their peers. So that means that they create a teen art show. They have a teen lecture program. There's a teen music night. They're even organizing a pajama party at the museum. I mean, this is the kind of programming that they create for their teams because we want to be a place that says we are welcome for all teens in the city.
That shows an underlying sense of service to the community that you're in, but it also very intelligently builds your supporters and your patrons for the next generation.
You know, we love to think about teens as not just visitors, but actually they're the future of the city. And so if we really care about what kind of city we're making, if we're going to be that energy force that helps make a creative and vibrant city, then we have to really invest in the creativity of our teenagers. That's why we call the program the Failure Lab, because achievement is, of course, incredibly important. We recognize that, and all schools are all dedicated to achievement. But where in a teenager's life is it okay to fail? And that's actually what art really should be about. It should be about the opportunity to try something, even if you don't know it's going to work, and try it, and it might fail, but then you might learn something from that, and that kind of creative life is crucial to cultivate in our city.
The galleries right now are housing some really dynamic work. Tell me about what goes into selecting what you will display here.
We show artists from all over the world, so people can see one day a selection of paintings by Denver-based artist Ian Fisher, beautiful cloud paintings. The next day they might see Brooklyn-based artist Rashid Johnson, who brought in a massive irrigation system covered with shea butter, and that was in the corridor. International artist Adrian Genia from Romania. He had his first US Museum exhibition here at MCA Denver. So we are constantly scouring the globe to show our visitors a wide range of what counts as advanced, experimental, challenging, delightful art today.
I think you capture it. Every time I've come to an exhibition here, those words fit perfectly. So how do you do that? How do you discern what you will bring to us here in Denver?
I wish I had a theory. I wish I had a science for how it is that we make decisions about what art to show. it's much more of an art form. I guess that's what happens when you hire art people to run art institutions. They're not going to give you a science. But I think that we have a curatorial team here. We hire, we have a great curator, Nora Abrams, and I really work on the exhibition program. We have a great head of programming, Sarah Bai, and she runs our lecture program and our live programming. And we're constantly looking. We're constantly trying to see what feels energized. And also, we're looking for something else. We're looking for what feels like something we've never seen before. So nobody ever even thought, no museum thought to do a large-scale exhibition of the artist Mark Mothersbaugh, the founder of Devo. And once we developed that exhibition, well then 6 museums around the country then decided to jump on board, and they're taking the museum after us, taking the exhibition after us. And that shows to me that we did something right. Like, we found something that didn't seem like it was even possible or relevant or no one had thought of doing before. And then once it happens, everyone says, oh, of course that needs to be done. And that's what we look for, ideally.
And it started right here at MCA Denver in the P.A.C.E neighborhood. I so deeply respect and appreciate the work that you and the staff here does in bringing this creative work to us. Every month, every year, however often you change the exhibitions and just the tone that you've set for being part of the neighborhood, I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thanks so much. I'm really thrilled to have you here, and always as one of our loyal fans. Thanks.
This week, a special performance of Fiddler on the Roof at BDT Stage raised over $4,000 for the Denver Actors Fund. Producing director Michael Duran and star Wayne Kennedy tell us why they felt it was important.
They live from job to job. There's no big savings or retirement plan for a lot of actors, and they need the help. And it's up to us, the community that benefits from their talent, to give them that help.
It's such a great cause, and it seemed like a no-brainer. I don't know that we even discussed it much. We just everybody was in. Once we heard the idea, it sounded like the perfect thing.
Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Good night.